Russia, the largest country in the world. Today, no country rivals Russia in terms of sheer size, stretching over more than 5,600 miles from the western enclave of Kaliningrad to Big Diomede Island on the edge of the Pacific. Russia covers such a vast area that Canada, despite being the second largest country in the world, could almost fit inside it, nearly twice over. But this immensity, often presented as a strength, has always been accompanied by a far more fragile reality. Governing, populating, defending, and unifying such an enormous territory has proven to be a constant challenge. Behind Russia's geographic grandeur lies a history marked by political instability, poverty, but also deep social fractures, and an authoritarian centralization imposed more by necessity than by choice. Let us see how Russia, the largest country in the world, was built by taming an unparalleled territory, an immensity that forged its power, while also feeding its tensions, its delays, and its internal fragilities. Here is the history of Russia. At the origins, an immense space without a state. For centuries, no identifiable Russian state existed. Long before its expansion, the vast plains of the Pontic-Caspian steppe were inhabited by Indo-European and Germanic tribes, Scythians, Sarmatians, Huns, Goths. These peoples followed one another without ever establishing a lasting political structure. The space was immense, but power was dispersed. It was only in the 9th and 10th centuries that the first embryos of organization emerged, when Vikings, more traders than conquerors in this region, sailed down the great rivers, the Volga, the Don, and the Dnieper. Although these peoples are most often associated with raids and conquests in Great Britain and Western Europe, they were far more active in Eastern Europe at that time. Over time, these peoples who had crossed the Baltic Sea began to settle permanently along the riverbanks they navigated. They founded cities such as Kiev and Novgorod, created trade routes, but above all, revealed a constant in Russian history, a land structured by rivers rather than by natural borders, which would serve as the backbone of this state. Assimilated among the Slavs, the Rus founded the first states of the region, notably Kievan Rus and Novgorod. By the 13th century, several principalities of Western Russia were prospering thanks to trade. The Rus, a fragile unity in an open space, Kievan Rus, followed by republics such as Novgorod, were the first states to give political coherence to this space. Yet this unity remained fragile. Cities prospered through trade, but society remained weakly centralized, dependent on vulnerable river routes and exposed to invasions from the steppes. This fragility exploded brutally in the 13th century with the arrival of the Mongols. Under the banner of Genghis Khan and his successors, these nomadic horsemen from Asia surged westward across the Eurasian steppe, annihilating every city in their path. Faced with a mobile and organized force, the immensity of Russian territory protected no one. Kiev was destroyed, the principalities were subdued, and for 2 centuries, Russia was forced to survive under the domination of the Golden Horde. Moscow, centralization as a response to vulnerability. It was in this context that Moscow emerged. More than a military power, it became an administrative center, capable of collecting tribute on behalf of the Mongols. Little by little, this bureaucratic capacity was transformed into political power. Ivan III, followed by his grandson Ivan IV, also known in history as Ivan the Terrible, understood that to survive in such an open and exposed space, Russia had to be centralized, authoritarian, and expansionist. Also known for having beaten his own son to death, in 1547, Ivan IV was crowned the first Tsar of all the Russias and initiated Russia's eastward expansion beyond the Ural Mountains over the following centuries. The conquest of the Volga, the subjugation of the Khanate, and then the expansion beyond the Urals were all attempts to push threats far away from the heart of power. This expansion began with small groups of Cossacks from the steppe, semi-nomadic warriors renowned for their formidable horsemanship. After conquering the Khanate of Siberia, in what is now Kazakhstan, the Cossacks were carried forward by their momentum, launching ever more distant expeditions across the immense Siberian expanse. But this rapid expansion masked a troubling social reality: vast and sparsely populated territories administered through coercion and connected by rudimentary infrastructure. Siberia, conquered immensity, absent society. The eastward expansion was spectacular. In a single century, the Russians reached the Pacific. Yet Siberia never became a fully integrated space. It remained an internal colony, exploited for its resources, populated by isolated communities, and governed from afar. Beyond the Pacific, Russia continued its expansion by sending in 1733 Vitus Bering, a Danish captain and cartographer, in the service of the Imperial Navy to explore the seas and straits that would later bear his name. An expedition that would unfortunately cost him his life. This dynamic repeated itself elsewhere: Alaska, the Caucasus, Central Asia. Russia expanded without ever truly consolidating its margins socially. The state grew faster than society could develop. Europe as an obsession. Despite its expansion eastward, Russia's priority in the 17th and 18th centuries was to draw closer to Europe and secure strategic access to the Baltic Sea, dependent on the Arctic port of Arkhangelsk, which was often paralyzed by ice. Russia went to war with Sweden to secure an ice-free port. The victory of Peter the Great in the Great Northern War allowed Russia to assert itself in the Baltic Sea, founding St. Petersburg and launching a vast modernization inspired by Western Europe. He certainly lived up to his name, as he stood over 2 meters tall at the time. In the 18th century, Catherine the Great extended this momentum by expanding the empire southward and westward at the expense of the Ottoman Empire and Poland, thus consolidating Russia as one of Europe's great powers. This Europe-oriented expansion aimed to resolve a fundamental problem, that of an immense empire that was economically and technologically vulnerable. Nevertheless, this expansion presented Russia as one of the most formidable and powerful states on the continent, mainly due to its colossal size and the immense population it could mobilize for its defense. The victory over Napoleon reinforced this myth of Russian strength, but it also revealed another truth. It was not modernity that saved Russia, but space, cold, and human sacrifice. Nineteenth century, external power, internal weakness. After 1815, Russia emerged strengthened from the Napoleonic Wars. It then extended its control over part of Poland and Finland, while continuing its expansion around the Black Sea and into the Caucasus. In the 19th century, the Russian Empire reached its peak, alarming European powers, particularly the United Kingdom. In the Far East, it obtained Chinese territories and founded Vladivostok in 1861, its main ice-free port on the Pacific. The sale of Alaska to the United States in 1867 pushed Russia to strengthen its presence in Central Asia, triggering a rivalry with the British Empire known as the Great Game. Indeed, one can understand here that Russia sold Alaska out of fear of losing it to the British Empire. But despite several advances, notably at Khiva and Bukhara, neither of these two powers managed to control Afghanistan, despite repeated military efforts over the decades. In 1878, the great European powers met at the Congress of Berlin to curb Russian expansion in the Balkans. In the 19th century, Russia was feared by Europe. Its territory seemed limitless, yet internally, society remained marked by serfdom, poverty, and the absence of deep reforms. Imperial expansion often served to mask the inability to transform the state from within. Moreover, the authoritarianism of the Tsarist regime fueled, by the end of the 19th century, a climate of political tension and the rise of radical movements such as anarchism and communism. Taking advantage of the chaos of the First World War, the Bolsheviks led by Lenin seized power in 1917. After a bloody civil war against the Whites, the USSR was officially founded in 1923. Some countries, such as Poland, Finland, and the Baltic states, took advantage of the situation to declare their independence and re-establish their own nation-states. The Second World War, though devastating, allowed the Soviet Union to expand considerably. By pushing back Nazi Germany, the USSR annexed the Baltic states and placed Eastern Europe under its control through satellite states, Poland, GDR. During the Cold War, its influence became global, supporting Allied communist regimes in North Korea, Cuba, Vietnam, and Afghanistan. Nevertheless, from the 1970s onward, the Soviet model began to run out of steam. The USSR inherited a gigantic territory, but also deep fractures. Despite its superpower status, the Soviet Union remained unable to bridge the gap between geopolitical grandeur and social well-being. Marked by economic stagnation and technological lag behind the West, the system failed to modernize. Despite the reform attempts of Mikhail Gorbachev, the weakening of the USSR proved irreversible, leading to its final dissolution in 1991. The history of Russia shows that its size, far from being an absolute strength, has often been a burden. A territory too vast to be homogeneous, too open to be defended without authoritarianism, too dispersed to allow balanced development. Russia became the largest country in the world, not because it was the strongest socially, but because it constantly pushed back its borders to compensate for its internal fragilities. Today, if we observe the conflict with Ukraine in this way, it becomes more evident to understand that Russia has repeated an old pattern. For centuries, Russia has sought in territorial expansion a means of protecting itself, a way for it to push outward tensions that Russian history has never really managed to resolve internally.